Well, well, well. Welcome back. I feel it's been a long time since I've been here, but I have a lot on my mind and I want to share with you. Uh, the topic today, I've thought about how I want to start this, but I think there's no other way than just to say, you're a liar. We're liars. We esteem truth. We hold truth in such a high pedestal, right? And yet, the truth of the matter, the reality is, we have countless ways that we lie. My argument, and today I'm going to go over, it's based off of an article that I read with my students called The Ways We Lie. And she cites about 10 different main categories or ways that we don't tell the truth, that we avoid the truth, that we um, play this game where um, we're not transparent with ourselves and with other people. So it's definitely prevalent to all our lives, but since it's the most recent essay and it really got my students thinking, as I always hope it does. I hope it will affect them and get them just a little more aware. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to reach out to everybody out there to think about and realize how much we honestly lie. That's ironic. How much we lie and what are the effects? And more importantly, while I talk about some of these main types of lying that are probably the most common, um, I really want to explore my argument as to why we're truly lying and then discuss the consequences of our lies beyond just the reason why we lie. Um, it it goes deeper than that, and the reverberations of not telling the truth, avoiding the truth with other people and with ourselves, it poses extremely unhealthy relationships, and that is what I want to explore today. So I thought I printed out kind of a synopsis, not of the article or the essay itself, but just of the 10 most common ways we lie to ourselves or to others. And then out of that list of 10, I've selected about six that I think are most common, even more common. Um, and then I want to talk about, again, looking at those lies, really exploring why we do it. And I'll say it at the forefront, we do it because we're afraid. We lie because we're afraid. Afraid of consequences, afraid of hurting someone's feelings, afraid of uh, breaking up, afraid of losing someone or something, afraid of being ostracized, uh, that is, being kicked out of the group, uh, being made fun of, being ridiculed. Um, it all goes back to fear. And I've always believed that any time we make a response or a reaction, which is the emotional response, a response is more intellectual, reasonable, you've thought it out. Reaction is um, where your emotions are pushing your words and actions. So either or, whether we're reacting emotionally or responding reasonably, whenever we make a decision out of fear, based on fear, because of fear, fear is the fuel in the rocket that pushes us forward anytime we are being propelled because of fear. that's when we need to stop. That's when we need to pause, reflect, and disengage, because more than likely than not, we're moving into an unhealthy direction for ourselves, for our relationships with people around us. So, with that kind of in mind, let's just talk about the most typical or common lies, right? There's the white lie. It's a harmless or trivial lie meant to protect somebody's feelings. Um, Telling somebody their outfit looks great, even though it looks kind of dumpy or frumpy. Um, Ignoring the plain facts, choosing to overlook obvious truths, often to maintain convenience or avoid confrontation. And that maintaining convenience because it's convenient for you, right? So you're only looking at or accepting that which works for your situation, or to avoid confrontation. Another, I think, stereotype, I guess, or commonality. People don't like confrontation, right? It's why typically bullies get away with bullying. When you hit them between the eyes, when you call them out, their weakness is revealed. Typically, the bullies are just right compensating for that which they don't have, and they use some of these distracting kind of methodologies and intimidation, hoping they won't be called out. So, ignoring the plain facts. Third one, omission. Uh, the question I love asking my students is, if you tell only part of the truth, is that still a lie? And it creates great debate. After we read this essay, I've done it both ways, where before we read the essay, I ask them that question, and most people say it's not a lie. It comes down to semantics, and it's the other person's fault for not being as precise. Um, but when and other excuses. But when we read the essay first and then I give them that question, invariably they're like, "Oh, that's omission." Like you are leaving something out intentionally to protect self, um, protect others. Thus, it's a lie. So omission. Next one, stereotypes and cliches, and this one drives me bonkers, especially with the news. They find that one instance, that one person, um, that one story, and create an expose on that person, on that situation, almost implying that everybody does that. And not just in the language. We know stereotypes, cliches, right? Using generalizations to dismiss complex truths. For example, boys will be boys, to excuse aggressive behavior, sexualization, misogyny, rather than addressing the real issue. But I find the news is one of the biggest, I guess, culprits, or the most guilty in using these stereotypes, and people don't even realize it. They read an article about, oh my God, you see that teacher, that one teacher, right? What about the other millions? Or did you read about that one woman who went off to France and wanted to escape the United States and get away from the politics and all the mayhem and everything that's going on, and she just didn't like it because it was dirty out there, and she came back, you see? So it's like this implication that that woman represents all of us. Like, what are you talking about? It doesn't work that way, and yet when I find I have conversations with people who are avid news readers, and really the conventional news, they regurgitate, that article of that one person, and therefore implicitly all those people do that. It, it's an easy argument to kind of break apart. You, but I think it not only distracts us, but it's dangerous, right? Obviously, stereotypes are dangerous because you're putting the individual in amassing the individual, right? It's not that one time or even a handful of times of people that you're going to group together, but you're saying now everyone, all the time, every time, never, of extremity. That's a red flag, right? And I guess when I'm talking about these scenarios, it's not just a red flag for you, the listener, but it's a red flag for you, for yourself. Still a listener, but a monitor of yourself. So when you're, in this case, using that one example to justify, to explain why everybody else, why they all do that, like catch yourself before it even leaves your mouth. And that goes back to why you want to respond and not react. When we react, it's emotional, it's chaotic, it's often nonsensical. Um, when we respond, it implies you've paused to think about this scenario, what you're feeling, and put it from the heart into the head and make it make sense before it leaves your mouth. Next one, groupthink. This is also very popular. And one of the things I want to talk about when I finish up this list, there's just a couple more. I want to talk about what is truth. Because if we're going to talk about lies, right? Well, then we need to understand what is truth. And this, I mean, how philosophical, how heavy can you get? And I love putting this question on the board, right? What is define truth? What is true? And there's almost kind of like a, oh, this is an easy one kind of vibe and energy with the kids. And then you see them start debating and trying to piece this out and trying to explain it and trying to use examples and just getting rather frustrated. So we'll get to that in a sec. But groupthink, prioritizing harmony over truth, often leading to bad decisions. To maintain the status quo, to fall in line, to do what everybody else is doing, right? Groupthink. This is extremely common and extremely dangerous. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, I want to talk about lying, and I want to remind you how often we lie. And again, the purpose of this episode is making you aware of it so that you can reflect and mitigate the ways you lie and why you lie. Um, Groupthink is extremely dangerous. Suddenly, everybody's jumping in on this agenda, on this direction of thought, and it's mob mentality. Mobs are the most dangerous social creature because it has no conscience. It removes the individuality, it removes the morality, it removes principles that ground us, that direct us, that guide us from right and wrong. And the mob mentality removes all of those mechanisms of restraint and control and discipline and order and just lets it go, right? It's what are those movies? There's like a million of them. The Purge, right? You get one day to just let it all loose and be crazy. We're fascinated by that creature inside of us. However, uh, it's dangerous. It's scary. It's lethal, right? So the last one, um, well, it won't be the last one. There's a couple more. Out and out lies, just telling a blatant, intentional lie that exists, and I even think that is no longer shunned. I mean, in our day and age, the political in the political world, social world, eh, all the different worlds, lying has it used to have a bad name and now it's just kind of matter of fact, right? Even down to I wasn't going to talk about the out and out lie. It's like, well, yeah, that's obvious, but But that's the point. It's obvious, and yet it's still so prevalent. It's still, here's a great word for y'all, ubiquitous. Like it's everywhere. Starbucks, for example, ubiquitous. They seem to be just popping up on every corner. Um, Dismissal is really kind of like gaslighting, rejecting somebody's reality or emotions, making them question themselves. And gaslighting as a term has really become popular, and rightly so, right? Psychological warfare, manipulating somebody's kind of weaknesses or insecurities to manipulate how they think and what they think and the actions that they take on those thoughts. Terrible. And last one is delusion, where you lie to yourself basically to the extent that you you're avoiding uncomfortable truths, but you're almost getting to the point where you're believing your own lie. It that your lie, which once out of fear to protect yourself, to not get in trouble, to not deal with the consequences, you've said it so many times, or you've just kind of jumped off that deep end that you literally believe that new reality. But to the rest of us outside of your mental bubble, like, dude, you're lying, man. That's just not right. That's not true. These are about 11 or 12 that I've named off. No, I'm sorry, about eight to kind of frame, all right, these are the many ways we lie. And for my students, after we read this essay and we discuss it, um, I have them reflect on it in writing, doing a few things. One, I want what are the typical ways that you lie? The lies come from a good place a lot of times, right? We don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to, put a ripple or conflict in our relationship. I think ultimately we're doing our relationships and ourselves an absolute more than just a disservice. We're doing a terrible thing because we're forging that relationship on a lie, on something that really isn't healthy. So after I ask them, what are the typical ways that you lie? And that's a question for you. Maybe I love hearing from you guys, and I really thank you so much for supporting this channel. I'm just beginning. Really excited about it. I love sharing um, my insights and lessons learned and screw ups and successes. I it's in my nature. It's what I love to do. It's why I've been a teacher and a professor for 31 years. Absolutely love doing this. So I really thank you for tuning in and listening. A lot of you guys are really sweet and just sharing your support. I love listening to when I go running or when I'm driving to work. I love listening to or one former student, God, like 11 years ago, she was applying for a new job and she said that she listened to my podcast about the episode about being nervous, and it's just energy. In fact, I was telling another student this last night before this huge presentation that she had put on, and she kept saying, "I'm nervous, I'm nervous, I'm nervous." And I said, "It's just energy, right?" And calling it nervous is kind of driving you in a negative direction. Whereas if you take that energy and you rename it and say, "I'm excited. I've got really cool things to share. I really want this job. I want to do this presentation. I'm great for this company. This is gonna just entertain and educate all the people in the audience." Like when you redirect that energy with a different name, your brain does amazing things, and suddenly, out of a negativity, it becomes a positive, and and you fuel that passion, that excitement towards success. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys listening. Um, and while you're listening, if you have the opportunity, uh, what are the ways in which you lie? Like, what are the most common ways that you lie? Uh, so that's what I ask my kids, and then I ask them to talk about the consequences. What did you save the relationship? Are you still friends? Did you get out of trouble? Right? Because there is a reason why we went that route. We could have done truth, but we chose lie. And then I ask them to ultimately make a promise to themselves. What is the one way, or maybe choose a couple ways in which you commonly lie, and make a promise to yourself? What are the ways that you are going to mitigate, that is, to lessen, to decrease, mitigate the lies you tell? So that's their essay, and that's the assignment maybe that I throw out to you. If you're really interested in, if this episode makes sense to you, and you're interested in forging healthier and stronger, more authentic relationships with other people, and again, I think even more importantly, not with other people, but with yourself, then put this episode on pause, and write down some of the ways that you lie. Uh, Give examples and try and enumerate them, right? What's the number one way, the one that you use the most? And delve a bit deeper, more deeply into, why do you do that? And if you come up with a couple instances, you'll create a pattern. You'll see the pattern. And that's what I teach my students, especially with reading. Our brains love patterns. They love connecting dots. And when we do that, take a step back, right? We see the bigger picture. And I think that's important, both to see the micro and the macro, right? The tree and the forest, because that provides a better balance. It provides a better understanding of the whole situation, how it works and its intricacies, and then the bigger function and implications it has. So put this on pause. What are the ways you lie most? Uh, why are you doing it? Give some examples, look for the pattern, and then make a promise. How are you going to s- do it less? So, and I'm going to go over that as well, because I think this is helpful, right? It doesn't work when we just say I'm going to do X. You really need to create a game plan. It's goal setting. It's looking at uh, the the steps that are part of the process. And I laugh because those are the trees. The process is, right, the forest. Practice self-awareness, right? First, you have to be aware that, yes, it's okay. Like, admit it. It's human nature to lie. And again, I know we have, it has such a stigma to it, like that's such a terrible thing. If it's terrible, then we're all terrible because we all lie. So, A, or number one, become aware of, okay, that wasn't true, or that wasn't accurate, right? Just kind of listen to yourself. Two, prioritize honesty with tact. And this is why I love language, uh, because you need it. You need your tools of of tool bags full of words so that you can get the best word for the right situation. Um, the example I always give my students is, right, do I look fat in this? And the kids are just like, oh my God, that's awkward. It's an honest question. And I've framed it as such using that particular word. So I'm being pretty harsh on myself because I think to use that word, we have to see that word. Uh, but clearly, I'm doing, as the asker, I want one of two things, right? I'm feeling overweight, I'm feeling frumpy looking, and I want you to lie and make me feel better, and we'll just kinda agree that we won't tell the truth. Or I want your honest opinion. Like, and so if you're being given that scenario, that situation, which is a little uncomfortable because yes, you look fat. You asked. But I think, like it says, right, you don't have to be so harsh. Just I don't know if those baggy jeans kind of fit your form as well as maybe something a little less baggy. They, there are ways where you can avoid the lie, be transparent, but just be less abrasive. And that takes practice. And that's why I say you need your words. You need your bag of tools to be able to have ways to express it in a way that isn't as aggressive or abrasive. Somebody changes their hairstyle. And what do you think of my hairstyle? To be honest, I kind of like it the other way. It brings out your eyes and they're just kind of brighter and you seem more sparkly. So that's how I prefer it. And then I've been honest with you, but ultimately, do I look fat? How's my hair? Whatever the question, you do you. And so have tact. You can say it in a nice way. Embrace transparency. You have to want to be transparent. You have to want to kind of want a cleaner, more honest life in order to start seeing it and being it. I made a note here. When you're in a conversation and somebody says something, you can ask kind of for transparency, like for clarity. Maybe somebody's talking about something very technical. And typically, and this is kind of a form of lying, typically we just kind of, uh huh, oh yeah, uh huh, uh huh, uh huh. And we're giving those social cues like, I understand you, but we're lying to ourselves and to them because I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, like 18 words back, there was a long one. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So take those moments and I use this a lot before. I remember I would just kind of just to kind of keep the conversation flowing and make them feel good is what I thought, right, I was doing. I would just, yeah, uh-huh, oh, uh-huh, and uh-huh, kind of go along with it. And then I realized what a lame conversation and what a lame friend. Like I don't know what the hell they just said. And I'm so fake. Right? So you stop somebody and just say, "Time out. What was that word? Like, what is that? I don't even know what that means." And that is, right, embracing transparency, recognizing, in this case, you don't know what the heck's going on, and saying, "I don't know what the heck is going on." Along those lines, if you need help, if you need clarity, then pause the situation and ask for it. So now they realize, "Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I was talking to you like I would talk to somebody in the laboratory who knows what the heck I'm talking about and studied chemistry and biology and microcellular activity." My bad. Basically, what I'm saying is, it's like, cool. Now you have such a better bond with that person. They're now literally, right, you're connecting, you're on the same level, and you're gonna learn something. And then you'll be like, "Wow, that's you're really smart. Like, that's really cool. And thanks for sharing that with me. Like, that's really interesting stuff." You get so much out of that transparency, that clarity, that connection. Next one, avoiding situations that encourage lying. And I think this goes along the lines of birds of a feather flock together, right? Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. If you just want, and I think we have friends for different scenarios, right? We have those friends that we just want to go out and play and party and everything's a joke and it's very light, right? And then we have those friends that it's much more meaningful. It's much more transparent. It's much more It goes deep. There's a stronger connection. So, you know, understand your environment and find your people. If you're down for the party, then you're down typically for the lie, because you might feel otherwise, but when everybody else is saying, "Oh, this and that," and you're like, "Yeah, that's groupthink," right? You're lying to yourself to go with the flow so that you don't become the party pooper. Um, Develop emotional resilience. This is good just anyway, right? Getting a thicker skin. I have a couple techniques that help me with this. When I get triggered and I feel it coming on, and then bam, and I'm like, okay, we're now in the reactive mode. I do a couple things that I've learned that for me help a lot. I count back from 4, and it's annoying as all hell. Because why is it annoying? Because I want to react. I want to emotionally just say something, do something. And I count back from 4. And honest to God, it's like the longest 4. It's not 4 seconds, right? It's 4, 3, 2. It's like, oh my God, just get there. And when I find, nope, you're not ready yet, I do a recount and I start from 4 again. And it can get real quiet suddenly, but I'm recalibrating, so where the emotions were at the forefront of how what I was gonna say and how I was going to what I was gonna do, I'm not denying them, I'm not ignoring them, I'm just saying, I don't want you to be the jet fuel for what I'm about to say or do. And so counting back from 4 helps you recalibrate and allows you to respond instead of just thrash out and react. Another one actually that I use is literally I ground myself. So, like right now, I might put my hands on the table and just out of my fingertips and out of my palms feel the desk and know that the desk has these legs to them and they are securely on the ground. My feet are on the ground and I've put them nice and flat. And I can feel out of the heel and the palm that through my socks, through my shoes, I'm on terra firma. That just the ground, the wood, the concrete, whatever substance I'm on, and I literally ground myself. So I let whatever energy entered me and triggered me, instead of it, like jumping on it and grabbing it and holding on to it, that's not my energy. That's not the energy I want, and I'm just gonna let it flow. I'm gonna let it go out of my hands onto the desk and dissipate into the room. I'm gonna let it flow and then go down my legs into my feet and into the ground and just get absorbed and disappear. It's like a few seconds of meditation, and you literally are grounding yourself and not holding on to other people's energy, because ultimately that's theirs. And when you get quote triggered, you're putting, makes me think of Dune when he grabs the hooks and he puts it into the worm. You're putting your hooks into their words, their emotion, their intention. Let them have their thing, and you do your thing. So I find that extremely helpful. In doing all of this, in practicing this, really understand you're creating a resiliency to other people's other triggers and other people's energy and feelings, their words, sometimes their cruelty, sometimes their dishonesty, and that resiliency really it adds up. So that resiliency is is going to be a byproduct of you just practicing this. And then the accountability element. One of the things I have on my board is own it, right? And responsibility is not accountability. Responsibility is kind of a generic term that says somebody should do something. but accountability is much more pointed, much more directed to the individual, and that's when you see kind of the results that you're looking for. So hold yourself accountable. Own it. If you screw up, if you lie, catch yourself. You know what? And just say, you know what? I don't know why I said that. That's not true. That's not how I really feel. And I think for the more back to one of the first uh, kind of way to help mitigate lies, right? Practice self awareness. The more you do it, the more aware you become of the times that you do lie, and catch yourself in the moment, right? No harm, no foul. Because once you start walking down that path, right? What they say? What a wicked web of lies we weave, right? It just becomes this amorphous monster that we try and patch and maintain, and it doesn't work, right? It takes so much extra work to lie, to create these false narratives, to avoid, to reject and deny. It takes so much work. Like, why are you spending so much energy on that when you could be so much more efficient and and healthy by just telling the truth, by just admitting uh, what really is going on, or what you really did, or um, what your true intentions were. It, I mean, look at it that way. Where do you want to put your energy? Into something that's basically toxic, or something that is beneficial to you? And then lastly, just replace lies with better communication strategies. Again, having having those tools, the words, and kind of a comfort with language, and a comfort with yourself to share what you're really thinking and feeling, what's really going on. Those are the most common lies that we use, we tell. I think that's a healthy list of ways to begin mitigating them. Now I want to get to the consequences. Again, I believe we lie because we're afraid. It stems out of fear, and fear is not the emotion, that jet fuel to propel us forward in words and actions. Fear can save our lives, right? There's a reason why fear is good, fight or flight, and it has its place. But I'm not talking those extreme instances. I'm talking the day in, day out, the average day where we interact with people. We're afraid of, getting in trouble. We're afraid of losing friendships or relationships. We're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings. We don't want that, and so we create these narratives, lies, to protect others or protect self. And what's fascinating is, and then we believe those narratives, like we to a certain extent. So maybe we're all, to a certain degree, delusional, because we're leading them on with a narrative that is not accurate, that does not actually reflect how we feel or what we're thinking. What if you weren't afraid? What if you weren't afraid of screwing up, of dealing with the consequences? I think, again, excluding the kind of extreme scenarios, you decided to do something, and most likely you knew that it had the potential to getting you in trouble, and you stuck with it. So you had you chose to go that way with your lie. with your narrative, and you're letting them believe it. You're convincing them that that's, quote, "the truth." When they do find out, because typically they do, what then, right? It's arguably gonna be worse. You obviously, the first thing I think that somebody's gonna say is, "Why'd you lie to me? Like, why'd you allow me to believe you and to trust you?" Trust is God, it is the strongest. It's a paradox. Uh, it is absolutely the strongest thing in a relationship, and yet it's the easiest thing to break. Once you lose somebody's trust, sometimes you never get it back. And for me personally, once I lose somebody's trust, there's always a bit of doubt in me. I wonder, okay, you got me once. Are you trying to get me again? And that sucks, right? You don't want that doubt, that kind of insidious, voice in your relationship. You want to just be upfront and dude's telling me X, Y, and Z, and I believe them X, Y, and Z 100%, right? Lies are just they're these creatures of habit, and yet they become monsters of destruction, and yet we persist, right? So think of it this way, and this is why I said earlier, lies are dangerous and toxic and hurtful for relationships, but that's only secondary because you can't have a healthy relationship unless you have a healthy relationship with yourself. And so if you are telling lies, essentially you are making a promise that you're telling the truth, that what you are saying and doing is based on what you truly believe is reality, and you do it with conviction. So if that is based off of falsehood, then you're telling yourself that you can't even trust yourself, right? You can't trust other people because you can't trust yourself. You have difficulty, right? I have trust issues. That's a you problem. It's not relationships, you and somebody else, it's you and yourself. If you are full of doubt and skepticism, never believing anybody, start with yourself. Right? That means you have set yourself up so many times with promises, with narratives, with interpretations that are not true, not accurate, and you know it. So, of course you're not going to believe yourself. Of course you're not going to be able to rely on yourself. Of course you're not going to be able to depend on, trust on, believe in yourself. And therefore, you can't do that with other people in your relationships. So your relationships, as strong as they might feel at heart, are quite weak because they're built on lies. They're built on falsehoods. We have different relationships with different people for different needs. Like I said, right? I just want to go out with my party friends and everything's just a laugh and it's a hoot and it's all great. That's cool. I'm not looking for anything really sincere and deep. But for those relationships that are much more meaningful, no way can I let the lies seep in because I'm okay believing that this is my relationship and yet it's built on a glue of lies, glue of deceit, glue of something that's not real. I don't think that's the way to go. And it's hard. It takes work, takes a lot of risk, and you're going to lose some people, right? It's human nature. Some people aren't ready for the truth. Think of that movie, Few Good Men or something. Um, some military general or something, and something a foul has gone on the base, and the attorney uh, finally triggers him, gets him to the emotional state, and he says, "You can't handle the truth," and it's true. Most people can't handle the truth. And it's why we lie so much, because it's easier, it's safer, it's calmer, to have these facades around us. And I am the last person to say my world is all transparency. I'm but I'm aware enough to tell myself that if I can mitigate those little white lies, those times when I omit information to avoid, uh, being responsible or being wrong or looked at as dumb or something, if I can catch that negative narrative before it takes hold, then I'm being truer to the situation. I'm being more authentic. I'm being real, more real, and that is who I want to be, right? With myself, and thus with everybody that I come into contact with and interact with. Um, so I guess that's a bigger question, right? To what degree do you want honesty in your life? And are you willing and able to pursue it? Because it is not easy, ironically. Maybe that's why we esteem truth over lies. Lies are easy. So those are big questions. But let's talk about truth then, right? Lies, I could talk a day about them. Truth is an interesting term, right? I gesticulate, and it just means I use my hands when I talk a lot. I tell the joke. Never mind, I'm not going to tell that joke. But I use my hands a lot to talk, to express myself. And when we're presenting, when I'm presenting, truth and lie and what is truth, I get a whiteboard marker. I put a pen in my hand, and I hold it for a while, and I choose the brightest one. I have like this kind of neon orange, so I'm really sure it's getting their attention. And I'm kind of exaggerating my gesticulations, and as I'm exaggerating, I I throw the pen. Is the truth. And I play it off like, "Oh, shoot, my bad. I dropped my pen." And there's this weird kind of quiet pause I with the students. They're like, "Wait, he said he dropped it, but that thing went like 20 feet. He and is it possible to drop something? But he was moving his hand. Did he?" So you can hear them, the machinery, working, like, to assess what they believe as true. I said one thing, but do they believe it? And in part of the ingredients to that, is Sperling reliable? Do I trust Sperling? Did he is he telling me the truth, or is something else going on? And then I kind of feign like confusion. You guys are looking at me kind of strange. I threw my pen, or I dropped my pen. I And then I have them talk about it. Invariably, they groupthink, they decide he threw it. But I throw enough rationale, enough doubt, that leads them kind of back to, well, gosh, maybe he did drop it. Maybe it slipped. I mean, it could happen. It's plausible. And so I said, this is the conundrum that we have with truth, right? Here I have 35 kids. You all saw the same thing, and yet we don't know 100% what is true. He threw it, he dropped it. And that's part of the dilemma with truth, is we like to believe that science proves things. Well, as I grew up, Pluto was a planet, and I guess now it's not anymore, right? Um, Names on a map. can suddenly get changed. So what's the true name? You see where I'm going with this? Science proves something, and while I like to believe those truths, part of me is also still open to the fact of it's true until something else is discovered and it's disproved, or suddenly it's needs to be adjusted. So what we thought was true is inaccurate. And so I think truth has this kind of more temporal existence. It's not forever. It's for the here and now. In this moment, that seems the most plausible explanation. So I'm going to say for now, I believe that to be true. And I think that's the first thing about truth is that it's not permanent. It's not, set in stone for eternity. I think groupthink is another component to what is true, as well as, it's a type of lie, it's a type of truth. If everybody in the audience believes Sperling threw his pen, then that is true for everybody in the audience. By persuasion, by just I don't know, I don't really I don't really care, so yeah, I guess that happened. And that's dangerous, right? That's a jury who is now just kind of, I don't know, I want to get out of here, man. It's been too long. It's been 2 days. This is a dude's life that you've got online, and your job is to cipher through all the facts and come up with a plausible, as close to 100% verdict of truth that guilty or not guilty. So I- this dynamic, I mean, it has serious consequences. Um, so I think truth is subjective. I think truth is temporal. I think truth is fragile, meaning it can be kind of manipulated, distorted. Two things can be true at the same time. And that is the world that we have entered, where, any event is just we're bombarded with that's what's really going on, and that's nonsense, and these people are fake, and you're a this, and I mean, you look in the comments section of any video, and it's just it's a maelstrom of just chaos, right? And sometimes it's entertaining, but oftentimes it's disturbing. Like, wow, so ultimately one video where we all saw the same thing, but we came at it from a different direction. Thus, we're seeing it in a different way. We're seeing it to kind of appease our beliefs and align to our beliefs. Therefore, both things are true, even though at the same time, even though they they oppose each other. Back in my day, there were three news stations: ABC, NBC, CBS. Period. That was it. I think it came on at 6 p.m. That was it. And what the newscaster said, period. That, okay, those are the facts. It was easier back in the day, right? You read an article in the paper, it was like, well, it says so here, so it's true. I think, ironically, while it was easier and it is more complex and confusing nowadays, it's better nowadays, even though it's more chaotic. And those go together. It's better because that was just one journalist's interpretation of just the facts. We all have our bias, right? Our biases. We all have our preferences and for and against things. So how we view the situation is going to dictate how we retell it, right? The narrative we give that event. So even though it's more chaotic and more difficult to sift through all the nonsense and chaos and comments, it ultimately takes more work, but it's worth it because you're actually getting a lot more opinion, and then you just settle with like, okay, so what makes sense? What is the most plausible? Um, and ultimately, what do I believe to be true? So you need to, it's important. You don't need to do anything. It's important to kind of run through in any given situation those questions like, is this source valid? Is this source um, something I can believe in or reliable? Um, is the situation, is the narrative of what happened, is it plausible? Like, is that something aligned to what I would expect or believe to be possible or true? You kind of run through what people say nowadays and what people do nowadays with those questions. At least I do. It helps me just discern, fact from fiction, and one's personal narrative to kind of more the actual or f- raw facts, and then I ultimately decide what I do. I agree with it or disagree, right? And that becomes my truth, and I live by that. And back to, lies, if that's truth, then that's the path that I strive to stay on. And when I fall off that path, then I need to be aware of that kind of predicament, and get myself back on the path, right? The path is easier to walk on. It's brighter. You've got light illuminating where you're going, rather than the obscurity of what lies create, the shadows that they cast. So it takes work. It's definitely more difficult and challenging, but it it brings about healthier relationships with the people that you care for, your friends, the people that you love. Um, it forges a stronger relationship that is based on things of trust, um, that that allows you to really to be able to depend on them when you need them. But again, that's the outward manifestation of pursuing truth. The inward is where it has to begin, because all of that relationship that you're having with somebody else can only exist, or exists only to the level or the point that you have that relationship with yourself. So when we trust ourselves, when we believe in ourselves, when we know that we can make a promise and we will keep it, that is where confidence comes from. That is where strong self-esteem comes from. That's where we eliminate self-doubt and insecurities and replace those with confidence, with strength, with this endurance and believability. That's a you thing internally, and you create that by setting yourself up for success, because you've got your own back. Once you build that as a foundation, poof, you jump on that, and then you have other relationships, and they are so much truer, they are so much stronger, they are so much cleaner and healthier and so much easier, because you've eliminated all the negativity and all that doubt and all of that ulterior ulterior motive, which just clouds the air and darkens the sky, and makes it difficult to move forward in life. So, truth and lies. I hope this helped. Take care.